Alrighty, this video is going to be talking about ARC weapons going into next season, Season 18 with ARC 3.0. This is not going to be one of those, demonstration guide type of videos where I'm going to show off every single weapon because there's a lot of them. I'm just going to go quickly through them, talk about them a little bit, mention, their ARC, where to get them, how to get them. Maybe you should take these out of your vault if you have them collecting dust there, etc. And try to go through it as quickly as possible. And then, quick note, I have one video on armor, for exotic armor, for this as well. And I'll have one for mods going into next season for ARC 2. Check those out if you want. Other than that, let's get started. First up is COLDHEART. COLDHEART has been basically in the dirt ever since Year 1 of Destiny. It used to be used in, like, the first ever runs of Leviathan for Callus, for DPS. And since then, I don't think it's ever seen any relevancy in the game whatsoever. I think this is a prime candidate as an ARC weapon to get some sort of buff or change or perk added to it that can make it actually usable. So if you somehow don't already have one of these, or at least a leveled up version, I would do so now, just in case. Next up is RISKRUNNER. This weapon seems to get play every time anything ARC has brought up into the game. For example, people like using this in the Fallen Saber GM just because there's tons of Fallen, tons of ARC. So it has niche uses here and there, and of course it's an ARC weapon. It's also very easy to get. Everybody can get this gun by just doing the initial New Light quest, I believe, from Banshee. You can get this weapon and have it in your inventory, good to go. I'd say this is a nice candidate to have for an ARC weapon going to ARC 3.0. It probably would have very good synergy with whatever Bungie brings for aspects and fragments. The meme that keeps on giving. So Trinity GHOUL is a weapon that most people probably only know because it used to be used in the whole Shattered Throne AFK thing to get kills forever to get XP until it was patched. This weapon's actually pretty good. Pretty good in endgame content as far as trash mobs go. It's actually been used in Day 1 raids on our team for at least a few raids now. And it does pretty good ad clearing. It's a solid weapon, has nice synergy in ARC AoE damage, and I think it could be used next season for sure. Now, CLOUDSTRIKE, I personally like this weapon a lot. I think it is underrated and flies under the radar. To be fair, we have a lot of busted stuff in the game that is more usable than this. But I think CLOUDSTRIKE is a nice example of having a great perk, being a great damage weapon. Snipers are never bad, and it can definitely synergize with something going ARC next season. I'm thinking maybe something that does a disorient kind of thing, maybe a slow, something combining with your fragments where the lightning from this gun would have like a chain reaction maybe, and then chain to other enemies in the area, kind of similar to like Ignition for Solar 3.0 that we have now. So CLOUDSTRIKE, I think, is worth definitely getting. If you don't have this already, go farm out some Empire hunts and try to get it. You don't need to go on Master or anything for that. Just go on the lowest difficulty and have fun and try to beat RNG and get it. Fourth Horseman, honestly, there's not much that needs to be said. Close range weapon, can pump out some nice damage despite being just an energy weapon and not a heavy. Obviously, it's an ARC weapon, and it definitely fits the mold of going into ARC 3.0. It's a solid weapon overall, even now, even outside of ARC. So I think it's a good keeper. If you don't have it already, go get it. Speaking about shotguns and in the heavy slot, Legend of ACRIUS, the old Legend of Chungus. I desperately want this weapon to somehow fit in the meta. It honestly isn't that bad. The only thing that holds it back is the fact that you have to reload after you use your initial shots. If there was some way to increase the reload while maintaining damage, or combining it with some sort of damage perk with ARC 3.0, I think this would be a really, really good heavy to use going into next season. I don't expect it to get any sort of synergy going into Season 18, but I pray I do, or they do, because this is definitely one of my favorite weapons from back in the day in vanilla Destiny 2. Prospector is another one of those weapons that not much needs to be said about. It can shoot out a ton of GL shots in a row, has a quick reload. It's used for some meme kills like you used to kill Riven back in the day with 6 Prospectors. So it's not terrible damage, it just doesn't have any fit in the game currently. But again, it's an ARC weapon, so maybe it finds some fitting going into next season, depending on what we get. Ooh, D.A.R.C.I. Look how they butchered my boy. So for people that haven't played Destiny recently, and didn't start in vanilla, this used to be the best damage weapon we had in the game, period. Believe it or not, despite it being completely mediocre now, it used to be the best that we had in the game, outside of cluster bomb rockets. That's the only thing that ever compared to this. Until, we got all our updates and power creep started happening, all that. And now it's just fallen out of any relevancy whatsoever and isn't used at all. I don't know. This is one of those weapons, again, that I really like, but it's just missing something. Perhaps it should just go in the energy slot like people say instead of being in the heavy slot. it just does not do enough damage to warrant using in a heavy slot as a sniper at all. Hopefully they change it, and hopefully they make it better, and hopefully we can use this in ARC 3.0 to some meme nonsense. Moving on. Honestly, I don't even know what to say for this. WARDCLIFF Coil is just a solid rocket. It's great. It kills everything that it touches. It destroys vehicle bosses in this game. You really don't need to change much with this weapon. The only thing I hope is that we can actually utilize this going forward with aspects and fragments and maybe make some nutty builds surrounding WARDCLIFF, because rockets are not really the best weapon to use for most cases for like boss DPS. But hey, again, maybe it can be used for that upcoming in Season 18. We'll see. Definitely use this though. So Thunderlord, I think, is in the same boat as CLOUDSTRIKE. I think the best case utilized for this is going to be its synergy with killing. With this weapon, it generates lightning strikes from above. So an ad clearing machine with hopefully the chaining capabilities enhanced, spread around, maybe disoriented, etc. for ARC 3.0. And maybe this will get some meta use then, because right now it's not getting much love. So hopefully it does. We'll see. QUEENBREAKER, I just wanted to mention because it's an arc weapon and a linear fusion. Linears aren't too bad these days, and it does have a nice perk that lets you get an arc bolt that blinds enemies on hit. But honestly, outside of that, I don't know what it can do going into ARC 3.0. I think this is one of those weapons, again, that needs some sort of perk change or buff to make it a little bit more special other than an arc bolt that blinds enemies. For that, you can just use a blinding GL. So I wouldn't necessarily say you have to, prep for this and get one of these, but I think it's a candidate to get changed somehow going into next season. All right, show of hands. How many of you actually thought I forgot about this weapon and wasn't going to mention it on here? Come on. Don't be shy. Raise your hand. ANARCHY. I mean, literally one of the best heavy weapons in the history of this game, in this franchise. It slaughtered everything for years on end, and it's still really good. It just got nerfed in terms of boss damage. Outside of that, it can still melt champions, yellow bars, etc. It's a fantastic weapon. You should absolutely have this weapon in your inventory, and if ARC 3.0 synergizes with ARC weapons at all in terms of damage, this thing is going to be a monster yet again. Highly recommend you get it. And that should be it for exotics. For this next section, I'm just going to be talking about legendary weapons with ARC affinity going forward that you could use. You could say this would be kind of a best in class scenario, or I guess in this case, best in affinity. So we're going to start off here. Sweet Sorrow is probably your best choice in terms of an ARC auto going forward. It has great perks. It's a 720 auto rifle, and honestly, this is probably the only good auto rifle we currently have. I personally am not a fan of Come to Pass, and I would just recommend getting this if you can. So for ARC Scouts, honestly, there's not much of a choice. I think Eternal Blazon is the only really viable choice you have in terms of a good perk pool and being a good scout. If you ever see any vendors selling this, or you may get it from an engram, I definitely would recommend keeping one. Outside of that, the only one you can get, I believe, is from Banshee, which is Black Scorpion, and that one, honestly, not really great. So Eternal Blazon, I think, is your only choice until they release another new ARC Scout. Hopefully, maybe Doom Challenges? Question mark. Now I know this is a little late, given that the Corrupted already passed this season, and we're not gonna have it again until Season 18. But for those people that did get a Horror's Least, this is a solid option to go into next season, especially if you got a Vorpal roll on this weapon, maybe with Perpetual, whatever it may be. And if you haven't, don't worry, the weapon itself will definitely be back next season. I don't know if Corrupted will be back, probably not, but I'm sure people don't want that back and just want the weapon to be in, like, Arms Dealer or something. Moving on, if you don't have a Horror's Least, though, a nice replacement for that would be Darkest Before. This has some great perks going into PvE, and this is still obtainable in the game. You actually can just go farm it out from the Kel Echo final boss in the Prophecy Dungeon. So this is a definite replacement recommendation from me from Horror's Least. Finally, the top choice in terms of ARC pulses would be Insidious. So Insidious not only is a great pulse, but you can actually go try to craft it out through the Evolved Disciple raid and get a guarantee roll of whatever you want. It's a solid pulse, it hits hard, it can roll adaptive munitions, it can roll demo, it can roll adrenaline junkie. It has several great perks to utilize. It's a solid option, and the best part is it's craftable, so you can go get it and get whatever you want. Highly recommend you getting it if you haven't already from Valve Disciple. One last choice for pulse rifles. This is kind of a gimme. This is obtained through just Vanguard strikes, so you may have it already in your vault, just casually collecting dust. This isn't a terrible option for an ARC pulse. It has some decent perks in it, and it's pretty easy to get. If you do Vanguard strikes often, you probably have seen it multiple times. So if you happen to have a good roll of this, keep it and go into next season probably using it if you don't have the others that I mentioned. Moving on to hand cannons, you have a couple of great choices. This one I wouldn't recommend going to farm out because it'd be a good big time investment to try to get one. But if you already have one, Nation of Beasts is a solid hand cannon. It rolls several good perks like explosive payload and the Dragonflies you see on screen for the curated role. Solid hand cannon, definitely recommend it if you already have it. Otherwise, your best two replacement choices are, the first of the two would be Kantata. It's a great weapon, it's a world drop, pretty easy to obtain, has several good perks such as Time Payload, Focus Fury, Vorpal, Rangefinder, Opening Shot. Very solid and easy to get. If you have this already, you're good to go on Arcane Cannons. The second of the two I'd recommend is Crisis Inverted. Now, it's very similar to Kantata in it can roll a bunch of great perks, but also there's a downside that it has a ton of crap perks as well. So this hand cannon specifically can roll Demo, Vorpal, Adrenaline Junkie, Kill Clip, Outlaw, One for All, Focus Fury, and also a sleeper pick in Adaptive Munitions. I think saving one with Adaptive Munitions is really good. Imagine next season Anti-Barrier Hand Cannon comes out. I think Anti-Barrier Adaptive Munitions will probably let hand cannons one-shot barriers even in GMs. That'd be pretty sick in my opinion, so it's worth saving at least one of those with that if you come across it. For SMGs, this is more of a veteran call-out. People that have played the game since about Warmind probably know this weapon used to be incredibly good with Warmind cells, and ever since, it's been put in the vault for the most part, collecting dust. It's not a terrible weapon on its own, really, but with ARC 3.0 coming out, and depending on what we get with aspects and fragments, this could be very, very good to bust out and become meta once again. If you don't happen to have ICLS SMG, I think your only other choice in terms of ARC going into next season would be a Stochastic Variable. It's not quite as good as ICLS SMG. The perk pool isn't that great compared to that, but it's still a choice for ARC SMGs because, well, it's the only other choice, honestly. This next one, I think, is going to be a bit controversial because the only way to get it is to play Trials, and I don't think a lot of people want to play Trials for a sidearm. But if you happen to have played Trials and gotten one of these, this sidearm's actually pretty good. I'm not going to lie to you. I am not a fan of sidearms whatsoever, but I got one of these, and honestly, it feels really good, has decent perks, and it's ARC, so maybe consider rolling it into next season. Finally, let's talk about the best ARC legendary weapon in the game, Arsenic Bite. This bow has been a monster in this game for literal years. Literal years. Anytime Overload Bow comes out, I bust this out. It is fan-effing-tastic. I love it. It has great perks. It can roll Explosive Head. It can roll Dragonfly. It can roll both of them together. It can roll Archer's Tempo. It is A-tier godlike. The only bow that I would consider in this level would be right now the new bow in Strident Whistle, where it can roll Incandescent. Otherwise, this is the best bow in the game, one of the best ARC weapons in the game, and if you happen to have this before it left the loot pool, great, get ready to keep it and use it next season. If you don't have it, I believe there is one way to get this, and that is in Dares of Eternity on a rotation weekly, so keep an eye out for that if you want to go get it. Moving along to energies, let's do a little bit of a lightning round quick speed because we don't want this video to be 30 minutes. For shotguns, you have Arc Sudden Death, which you can get from the Prophecy Dungeon at the final boss, as well as Matador 64, which you can get from the Ogre boss in the Grasp of Avarice dungeon. Neither of them are godlike currently, in my opinion, but if you want an Arc shotgun, these two are the way to go. I will give a quick shout out to Dead Weight, the Arc shotgun from Gambit. Next season, on Season 18, you'll be able to roll this from the Gambit engrams, so maybe if it's updated, it can actually be a good solid weapon that you can craft and go after a certain role. So, thought I'd mention. Next up, the best GL in the game, outside of Anarchy, in my opinion anyway. Forbearance is extremely good in the current meta. It has arc chaining abilities with Chain Reaction, as well as Ambitious Assassin to give you double shots every time you get a kill. Going into next season, I think this is going to be an extremely good weapon for ARC 3.0. So, if you can, go get it. You get this in the Vob the Disciple raid. You can craft it if you get 5 red borders and get that perfect roll on it, or just get any type that you can, and honestly, it would still probably be pretty good. Runner-up to that will be Salvager's Salvo. It's a solid weapon. It's a quest item, so you can finish it and get it pretty quickly, and it rolls Chain Reaction, Vorpal, and Demo, which is pretty solid for certain situations, such as like a Starfire Protocol build with Warlocks. Solid GL, runner-up, moving on. For Arc Fusions, in terms of PvE, I think the only answer really is Plug 1, and currently, the time that this video is supposed to be out, it will be Plug 1 for Nightfalls for the last time this season until it gets vaulted and not available going forward. So if you're trying to get an Arc Fusion, this week would be the time, and your answer would be Plug 1 from Nightfalls / GM Nightfalls. Snipers, same thing as with Salvager's Salvo. This is a quest that you can get from the tower and acquire Adored. It's not meta-defining or anything, but it guarantees you rolling Triple Tap and Vorpal as an Arc weapon going to next season. So it's solid and easy to get. There you go, moving on. Apostate, I'd say it's not better than Adored, but I did want to mention this just because of people that used to play Shadowkeep and maybe coming back now and haven't done the Adored quest yet, but might have this in their vault. Apostate is a decent sniper, and it rolls lead from gold explosive payload, so it's a decent option to use if you don't already have Adored. Finally, for snipers, we're going to talk about glue. Glue. We're gonna call it glue. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sure I'm butchering it. So glue is a sniper currently in the game as a world drop this season. It can roll Overflow and Focus Fury and or Golden Tricorn, so a decent option to have to look out for if you happen to get one, and it's Arc. The final energy what we're going to talk about is NEZAREC'S Whisper. It is currently in the game as a reward from Containment / Sever, and as well you can get it from the Crown of Sorrow. Additionally, you can also craft this weapon and roll it with Lead from Gold plus Adrenaline Junkie or Vorpal, or even Adaptive Munitions going forward in the future, depending what artifact mods you get for glaives. Solid choice, definitely craft it out if you can going into next season. Let's talk about heavies. So Have Truce is a sword, Arc Affinity going into next season. It can actually roll good perks outside of just Eager's Edge, which was what most people use it for. It can roll Assassin's Blade with either Tireless or Relentless, and if you really want to get spicy, you can roll Thresh to farm more super energy when you're getting sword kills. Decent, solid choice. You can get this from Dares of Eternity, as well as farming for the Void version of this, which is the other half, but it's Void, so we're not going to cover that. Moving on. Another great Arc sword option is Hero of Ages. I actually have a full video dedicated to the sword because of how good it is. It is acquired from the Grasp of Avarice dungeon. It can roll Chain Reaction, which is rare on swords, and it's really, really fun to abuse, honestly, on a sword. And also, on top of that, it can roll Demo, Tireless, Relentless, and Unrelenting, giving you healing when you get Chain Reaction kills. And additionally, you can also roll One for All, but I'm not really a fan of that. I would stick with Chain Reaction and any of the perks in this slide that I mentioned. Really great sword. Go get it if you haven't already. If you do have it already, then you're good to go. Finally, to cap off Arc swords, I think this is the best Arc sword in the game. If you don't believe me, check out my Bequest video. It is insane how good this weapon is. This weapon rolls Surrounded plus Thresh or the usual Tireless and Relentless strikes. Thresh with Surrounded on this sword, honestly, is ridiculous. You can farm out so much damage while gaining so much super in a short amount of time. It is absurd. Check out the video that I have farming the Europa Lost Sector Perdition. I get my super in not even 1 minute just using this sword, and it shreds through quite literally everything, including Wyverns on the highest difficulty. It's absurd. If you don't have this already, go farm this out from Tanix when the rotation is for Deepstone Crypt. The sword is amazing. Finally, we're going to talk about Arc Rockets. This one might be a little late for some people because it's going away, but the Hothead is a solid and probably the best, honestly, choice for Rockets in terms of Arc going into next season. Hothead can roll several perks that are great, such as Clown Cartridge, Vorpal, Explosive Light, Lasting Impression, and in the other slot, it can roll Tracking, Field Prep, Demo, and Auto-Loading Holster. Great set of perks. Obviously, also rolls Impact Casing. I'd highly recommend you keep this, don't dismantle it, or maybe you can farm it out before it goes away into next season. There you go. And the other option for Arc Rockets would be Sleepless from the Dreaming City. I bet a lot of people forgot about this rocket, that it even exists. You can get this from the War Table through the Science Battleground War Table portion from this year, as well as going into the Shattered Throne and just completing it for RNG drops. Note that the only way to get Vorpal autoloading for this rocket is to go into the dungeon and get it there. Otherwise, you can get autoloading, but you can't get Vorpal from the War Table. Ah yes, the elephant in the room has returned. I know. This is by far the best Arc weapon in the game. Why are you talking about other stuff? I wanted to mention other stuff before mentioning Stormchaser. Yes, this weapon is insane. It's Arc. It's an absolute must-have going into next season. If you didn't already have it, you need to go farm it in the Duality Dungeon. For those of you that don't know, the Vault Encounter is where you need to farm this because of the drop rates there. It's a 1 in 5 drop on normal, as opposed to Keitel. It can drop like 1 in 11. Obviously, much worse odds on that. So I'd recommend you farm this on normal, Duality specifically, if you're going for it. And you really, really should, because it's insane. But if you're lazy, we're going to end this on a funny note. You can use good old King Cobra 4FR as your Arc linear option if you really don't want to get Stormchaser. There you go. There you have it. Bunch of Arc weapons that you can look for or save going into next season. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you want to talk about armor, I made a video on that as well. Check it out on the channel. And I'll be doing one for Arc mod to go into next season as well. Let me know what you think of the choices. Did I miss something? Do you particularly don't like or do like some of these choices? Let me know in the comments below. As always, a like, share, or subscription would be appreciated. It does help the channel. Also stream daily on Twitch. Twitch.tv/SneakyBeaver. All the links in the description. Twitch, Discord, Twitter, yada yada, all that. Time to sell out. No, I'm done. Alright, catch you guys in the next video.